So have a look at your solder. Make sure you have that nice curve between the two pieces. That's called the meniscus. And if that's nice and pretty, what we're going to do is cut our wire off. Just slightly above the bail. Now what you need to do at this point is take your flat hand file and round that off, because when you cut your wire with side cutters, it squeezes it into an oval. And if you don't round that off again, you'll have difficulty getting it back through this hole. So round it off, and then we're going to assemble the piece and solder this. So just use your flat number 2 cut hand file, but have the safe edge or the smooth edge facing your bail. On the off chance you touch it, it won't put a mark in it. I usually put my thumb or finger up in the way. And you can file this into a bit of a taper, because we're going to open this up, put our pearl peg on, and then push it back together. And if this has a slight taper, it'll fit into the hole a little bit easier. I'll show you. So this is our pearl peg, and we want to twist it now because it'll be more difficult to do it later. Now, I don't want to twist it right up to the eyelet, so hold it about 2 millimeters down, then grab the other end with your parallel jaw pliers, about 10 millimeters in between. If you try to twist too small an area, it'll usually just break. So that's what I want. And this has to be long enough that it'll go through the cup and the pearl. So what we're going to do is actually cut it about 12 millimeters long total. So it looks like this. Now what we're going to do is open this up, and I'm just going to hold it with my flat round pliers, pull it open, and we want to open it enough that we can put our pearl peg on now and close it again. Now be careful, because any mark that you put in the outside you're going to take off. So be as careful as you can when you're pushing this back together. Once again, I'm holding it with my flat round pliers. And this doesn't quite line up, so what we're going to do is just look down through the hole, bend that until you can see it, and then you can just push that down over it. Now I'm going to squeeze that together until there's about a mil clearance here. I think I'll just use my parallel jaw pliers. And a few marks that I'm going to have to take out. But basically, this is what you want. And now we're going to solder this side and then tidy it up so that the front will have no solder marks on it, and it's quite easy to clean and polish, and the back will be easier to file and sand, and we'll get this so that it's nice and flat and an invisible solder joint. You can see that we need to solder here, and we need not to solder this to the other side. So what you can do is you can use whiteout on this, or ochre, or rouge. any number of things, or you can just pay attention to where your flame is. And normally, if you don't have flux, get it so you can see it, if you don't have flux anywhere except where you're going to solder, the rest of it won't solder. So what I'm going to do is just that to make sure that there isn't any down there. But what I'm also going to do is spin this around so it's completely out of the way. So when I'm heating this up, that wire won't be heated. Now, I'm going to use a piece of Easy for this, just because it melts at a lower temperature and it should make it less of a problem. So I'm just going to make that so it touches both pieces. Regular old neutral flame. Dry out the piece. And I'll just back up a little bit so that you can see my flame is actually pointed at the bale, and it's not going underneath at all. I've got it up here on top. So try not to heat the wire directly, heat the bale, and when the solder flows, back away. So check it at this point to make sure that your solder peg is free. If it is, quench it, pickle it, and then we'll tidy this up. So we're out of the pickle. Have a really close look. Make sure that you have a beautiful solder joint all the way around. And we're going to just cut this with our side cutters. And then we're going to file with our number 2 cut flat hand file. Until that disappears. And then we're going to sand the whole piece until it doesn't have any fire scale on it. So sand it all back, and I just keep turning this peg so that it's up on the inside out of harm's way, because you don't want to damage that. If you damage it, if you break it, you're going to have to do all this over again. So just sand it all back, and I would just use my sanding stick with 400 grade paper on it. Once you get it to the point where there's no visible fire scale, and you do that by holding your piece against a piece of white paper, and you can see the reflection, you'll be able to see whether there's fire scale or not. Once you don't have any fire scale, then go to 800 grit, and then 1000, and then polish it. If you want a satin finish, you still need to get the fire scale off first. So get all of the fire scale off, and then put whatever finish you want on it. When you have this finished to your satisfaction, assemble the piece, cut the length correctly, and then when you get it all the way you want it, check everything for fit, and then we're going to use 2-part epoxy just on here and a little dot on the pearl, and assemble it. Now you don't need much. Just a little spot, but you do need an equal amount of each. This is 5 minute, I probably said. And I'm using a cocktail toothpick to mix. So just a spot on the peg, and a spot on, and I push it in the pearl. And then we assemble it. And put it down and let it alone for 5 minutes. So I'm just holding it on my third hand so it doesn't wiggle. And leave your mixing device in the glue so that you don't try the pearl to see if it's glued. You try this. Once this is set, then that'll be set and everything will be fine. And you're finished. Ciao.